Alright, so here we are. I'm getting ready now. I'm going to go and start the pieced flag in the hoop on page 14. And what I need to do is I want to go find all the material that we need. Alright, so when I go down our cutting sheet with our fabric scraps, we need the pieced flags, which is the white on white background fabric, which is this white. Okay. I need, as I go down through here, the pieced flags, short and long stripe on the red with words. So here's our red with words. Also, when I go down here, I need the pieced flag, the star piece, which is out of the mustard. So I got my mustard out. And at the very bottom, I need the pieced flag piece 5. All right, which is the star background. That is out of the dark blue pattern fabric. So I have these out. So what I want to do is I want to show you how we're going to cut them. All right. I'm going to start with the white. It was at the top of the page. Okay. So here's my white fabric. Now when you look at your cutting instructions, we need 1, 2, 3, 4, the first 5 pieces cut out of the white on white. All right. So this is how I am doing it. So I need the cherry background, and it's 6.5 by 6.5. So basically I'm pretending that the selvage is off, and this is my 6.5 by 6.5 square. So I'm going to cut that out of there. And I am going to mark this piece the cherry background, right? Because that's what it is. So I just missed a little edge here. There we go. And I missed this down at the end. All right, so this is my 6 by 6 background right now for the cherries. I'm just going to mark that. I'm going to set it aside, okay? So that when I get to the cherry block, I have that available to me. So when I look down further on our list, we need a 5 by 5 piece for the piece star number 2. So I need a 5 by 5. And what I did is I'm cutting these like the large ones and then moving up to the smaller ones and trying to use my fabric as best I can. So here's my 5 by 5. I'm going to cut that one out. Okay. So this is part of my flag. I'm going to hold on to that. All right, the next thing that I have is the second one on the list. It's the cake middle. It's 4.5 inches across and 2.5 wide. All right, so this is my this is part of the cake. So this is my second layer of the cake right here. Okay, so I marked, I did a little, again, little sheet that said cake middle. I'm going to lay it on there, and I'm going to set it to the side right now. I'll just pile those couple up over there that go to different things. Now, what else we need is we need the short white stripes for the flag, and they're 7.5 by 2 inches. So I have them here. They're 7.5 inches by 2, and I can get 2 of them out of this section right here. And I need the long stripe for the flag, which is 11 inches by 2. And I can get this out of this piece right here on this side. All right. So that is how I am cutting this white fabric up. All right, so this one is 11 inches by 2. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn it this way so I can cut down the one side with my rotary blade. And I'm cutting it just a little bit more than 2 inches. Only because of it being along that, the frayed edge where we tore the fabric. Okay. So there is the long stripe for the flag. And now I have these 2 pieces that are 2 inches by 7.5. Now, most of these strips, you know, this tells me I have like a 1/2 inch here at the top. You know what? I'm not going to worry about that 1/2 inch. I'm just going to cut this all the way down. If you wanted to save that 1/2 inch piece of fabric, you could. But these are just my short stripes for my flag. The only pieces that you have to cut exact are the pieced blocks, the ones that make the little squares. Those have to be cut to like the exact size. All of these here that I'm using for like an applique or background fabric, they're all a little bit cut a little bit bigger than required. So if I was short just like a 1/4 inch of fabric, that would be fine. It would probably still work. But I did cut these all to the size they needed to be. And this is what I have left of my white. So basically I am just going to fold this up and set it to the side because this is leftovers. All right. Now I'm going to work on my red stripes for the flag. Okay. So when I look at the red, we're going down to this one here, the red words. And there's, and I was counting them. I have 2, 3, 4 pieces to cut out. And for some reason, I have another one marked on here. Okay, and this one, the cake top layer. So don't forget this one up here. I need the cake top layer is 3.5 by 2. And then I have all these in the red, this red box here. I need the piece block, piece number 4. So that is a pieced block. So that is the one I'm saying you need to cut that 2 by 3.5. And then we have the piece flag short stripe. You need 2 of them, 7.5 by 2, the same size as the whites. And then you need a long piece for the flag stripe, and that is 11 by 2 inches. Okay, so this is how I mark these. So again, here's my selvage down here. It's 2 inches wide. It's a little bit more than 2 inches because of this, again, that edge where we tore the fabric. So me being a little wider is fine because I'm just going to trim that off when we lay down all these pieces. So this needs to be 11 inches by 2. So I'm going to cut that. Then I have the 7.5 by 2 and a 7.5 by 2. I need 2 of those for the other 2 stripes. Then I need the piece block, which is 2 inches by 3.5. And the last piece I need again is that one up here that is shown under the white with red dot fabric, but I'm making it red words because I want my cake to be red, white, and blue. I need another one that's 3.5 by 2 inches. So I need 2 of those. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces I'm cutting out of this fabric. All right. So I am going to start cutting these. And so I don't cut on my white. I'm moving them out of the way. So they're not in the camera anymore. So I'm going to start first with this 11 inch by 2. I'm actually going to take this all the way up because right on top of the 11 is the 7.5. Just going to take it up where I need to. Alright, and then I can double check here. Let me do it this way. There's my 11 because I have the selvage out here, so I don't want to count the selvage in my 11 inches because I don't want to see selvage, you know, on the top of my pillow. So here's my long stripe. Here's the one that should be 7.5. And mine is almost 8. 1, see, 7, 8. So I don't quite need it that long. So there's my 7.5 by 2. And now what else I need to do here is I need to go cut another row of 2 inches out. The first one will be the 7.5. And then I'll do 2 of them at 3.5. So they're 2 inches wide by 3.5. All right, so here we go again. I have my 2 inches. This first one should be 7.5, and it basically is. Again, I have the selvage on this end. So if you're afraid that you're gonna, when you lay your fabric down, that you're gonna catch the selvage, then what I would do when I'm cutting this is I would just trim that off, right? Just trim all the selvage off, okay, and throw it away if you're afraid that you might catch that or forget the selvage is there on the end. Okay, because these pieces, again, don't have to be exact. They just need to be pretty close. All right. Now I have these 2 here I need to cut, and it's 2 inches by 3.5. All right. There's one. And here's the second. I'm just going to flip them over. You can kind of see what they look like. And one of these is going to be my cake, right? It's going to be the first layer of my cake, because the first layer is going to be red, right? So it's going to be red, white, and blue cake is the way that we're going to do it. The other one is going to be the pieced block. So let's look at the, you know, but to me, I'm going to look at them and think, you know, which one might I want to be the middle of the cake. Like this says fire up the grill. I might be able to get that word right in there. It says sunshine on it. This has the word love in it. So I think I'm going to use this one for, why am I saying cake? Let me look at this again. Oh, it's the cherries on the right now. Cake top layer. It is the cake top layer. What did I do with that? Oh, I must not have wrote it out. Okay. That's what I did. So this is the cake top layer. I just didn't write it. Alright, so which one of these would you like to put on the top of the cake? That's the one I'm going to take. Alright, yeah, and just because they have some words on it, maybe I can fussy with the words and get them to show up. I mean, that's up to you. This other one that's left is part of your pieced blocks. So I'm putting it right in this bag with the other pieced blocks, because eventually you're going to have, I think, 4 or 5 in here. Alright. And then I will put shape flex behind that if I don't do it. Since I already put it in the bag, I'll leave it here. But later I'll make sure that all these have shape flex behind them. Alright. Now, the next step is my next color. So I'm going to lay the red to the side. So as I go down the list, we have our mustard. This is the same mustard color that they are using in the actual pattern. All right, it's right here. It's the mustard seed. And we need to cut the small star, which we already did the star on the first one. So I don't really need this one because I used that scrap I had. But again, if you needed it, I told you just to trim a little small corner out. I mean, it doesn't need to be 1.5 inches because that star is a lot smaller than this. But, you know, again, they allow for extra. So I need a 5x5 piece, all right, for the star in my flag. And I need a 3x3.5 piece to go with the flowers, okay, for my flower pot, for that flower. So these are the pieces I need to cut out of the mustard. So here we go again. We're just going to cut these out. And I'm cutting them all at the same time because I'm just, you know, cutting the things I need out of the fabric as we get to that color fabric. Some of you, you know, maybe you want to cut them all at the same time. I don't do that. All right, it's not something that I do. I usually cut them as I go. So I take a break from doing embroidery and then coming back to cutting. It just breaks up my day and I find that easier for me. All right, so the 5x5 is part of your piece star. Now the fabric's a little thin, so I might put shape flex on that. The white, that's going to be the other center. I'm probably going to put shape flex on that piece as well. All right, these pieces here, they shouldn't be sitting over on anything because they're going to be the stripes. I think they'll be okay without shape flex, so we're going to see how it goes when we start doing our quilting, but that's the way I'm going to play it. All right, I'm going to cut out my piece for the flower. So this piece for the flower is an applique piece. I just cut it straight across. It's going to be bigger than I need, but that's fine. And I'm not cutting the 1.5 by 1.5. You should have already, you know, used that piece in the first block. So I'm just going to set that to the side. So this is for your flower petals. So I just made a little note and I called it flower petals. All right. The last thing you need for the flag, all right, we need the flag piece number 5, which is the star background. Okay, it's down here at the bottom, pieced flag, the star background. It is the dark blue printed fabric, and that's what it looks like. All right, there are 2 pieces you need cut out of the dark blue. You need the pieced flag, which is 6.5 by 6.5 square, and you need a piece that's 2 by 3.5, which is going to be a pieced block and go in that little bag that I started. All right, so I need these 2 pieces, 6.5 by 6.5 and the 2 by 3.5. All right, now the blue is really dark, so I'm not sure that I will add shape flex to it. If I think it would look crisper, let's say, or nicer as the flag, then it's possible I would come back and do the shape flex. I just want to grab my scissors here and not take a chance with the rotary color this morning, because I don't want to overcut the blue. I don't need to do that. So here is the part of my star that we need. And then this is, again, one of the other pieced blocks. So I'm going to trim this. I'm going to set this extra blue to the side, and now I'm going to trim this down to size. This is supposed to be 2 inches by 3.5. Cut my 2-inch side. And now I want to measure over 3.5 from the edge. So I like lining it up 2 ways. So I like lining this up 3.5, and this going across at the 2. And I like the double look because it should line up more than one line on the ruler. So this is my 2 by 3.5 piece. All right, again, that is a pieced block. All right, so here's my bag. And I'm just going to throw my pieced block of the blue right in here with these. So that's 3 of them that I have cut out right now. Okay. So I want to go back to my instructions. Lay these out here. This is scrap. These are my other pieces that I have. So I'm on page 14. It talks about the block by block quilting at the top. We are going to load in my scroll, right? I'm going to quilt everything with the scroll when we're done. With this particular block, you're going to actually build the block first, because that is the background. There's no like fabric you lay down as background first. So I do want to lay down my batting and have it stitch the batting down and trim it, and then start piecing all of my star and my flag together, and then when it's all done, do an all over quilting. And I'm going to probably continue to do the quilting with the scroll. Like I want to, you know, just make everything the same on the top. So I need the short white strips. I need 2 of them. I need the short red strips. I need 2 of those. So I'm just going to go right through my little list here and make sure I have what I need. So here's my 2 red strips short. Here's my 2 white strips. Here's a long red and a long white. Right? The next thing is the star background fabric, which is the 6.5 by 6.5. This is my star background fabric. Then I have the long white and the long red. Then it gives me a 5 by 5 for the star. And then another 5 by 5 for star 2. So you'll have star 1 and star 2. So star 1 is the mustard and star 2 is the white. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay these out in order. So I'm going to have 2 short whites, 2 short reds. Then it calls for the piece star background, which is the blue. Then it calls for a long white, a long red, and then the yellow and the white. So these are kind of the order that they are right here. So I have that ready to go. This is all pieced. So I'm going to have a white bobbin in, and I'm going to just use probably my white thread to piece it all together. As Kimberbell noted here, it's all with the hashtag line. So it's all done in the seams here. So you could probably use any color that you prefer. I would say a light color versus a dark color of thread. So if you wanted to use a tan or a neutral color, that would be what I would recommend. So that's basically where we're going to start. So I will be back when I get my machine loaded up, and we'll see what everything looks like. Okay, so I'm back over. I'm around to my machine. I got my hoop loaded. Right, and we're using the light mesh cutaway, so that's loaded in my hoop. I know you can't see it, but what I wanted to refer back to really quick was number 2. So this is block number 2, which is the pieced flag. If you go to page 4 of our instructions, it tells you for block 2, they're using a quilting design that is 6 by 10. So I'm going to go get my scroll design that is 6 by 10 and load it in. All right, so I know that's how big the quilting needs to be on that block, is 6 by 10. So that's where you find that on page 4. All right. Then what I did was I went and I found our actual flag design. The, wow, where did it go? So I want to open up our actual flag. All right, now it's suggesting it's an 8 by 12 flag for the embroidery hoop. All right, so it does stitch. The embroidery field itself is 6.56 by 10.62. All right, so you're using your bigger hoop. So I went ahead and opened that on top of my quilting design. So it's going to do my quilting design first. So I apologize again for the screen, but you can see I have some scrolls in the background there. And this is my flag and how it's laying on my screen. And I have that mesh cutaway, as you can see there. Gonna bring that in. All right, and I have my hoop loaded, and you can see here, here's my first one that we stitched out. I just left it here hanging on the hoop just to save some stabilizer. It's just me. So I am ready to start. I just want to make sure I have some white bobbin in and white thread. Okay, I am going to start stitching, and what this is going to do first, right, it's going to lay down my placement line for my batting. So it's going to do a rectangle. This is going to do a big rectangle here. I'm going to dig out some of my batting I have some scrap batting. The Kimberbell batting is nice to use as well. I just like a thinner batting personally, even when I do these. Let's see if the slate makes a difference. You see a little bit. Alright. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my batting down. And you can pre-cut your batting just a little bit bigger. You know, we're using the 6x10 design, so you would want to cut it like 7x11 to make it just a little bit bigger. Because it actually will stitch out like a 1/2 inch bigger, you know, 1/4 inch on all sides. So that's why, you know, I would make it like, it's going to do a 6.5 by 7.5, so I would cut my batting 7x8. Sorry, 7 by, it's 10, it's going to stitch out 7x11. So I didn't cut my batting down, I'm just laying it on here. I'm going to trim around it. Doing the placement of the batting, my next step is going to do the trim. I want to trim all my batting out of the seams, right? So that's why I like doing this method. I don't have any batting in my seams at all. So it's going to stitch this. It goes around twice. When it's done going around, I'm going to trim it up and we're going to start the design. Okay, I have my batting trimmed now, and the next step would normally be to do the placement line for your background fabric and then quilt it. But remember, we don't do that with this one because we need to actually assemble this background item into our star. So I need to skip the next 2 steps. Actually, the next 3 steps. I need to skip the step of where to place my fabric, skip the step of tacking down my background fabric, and skip the quilting design right now. Because I don't want to quilt the batting. I want to wait till I assemble my flag and then I'll come back to this step. So now I actually am looking at exactly what picture 1 looks like, the embroidery file of the flag. Alright, so step 1 is to stitch the piecing template. I am stitching this on cotton batting. Alright, I am going to use my white thread. You might not be able to see it too well, but it should be fine for the way that we're going to assemble this. So I'm going to hit start and do number 1 of the embroidery file. And all it's doing, it's just stitching exactly this stitch here in picture number 2, kind of where everything needs to be put down when we start to build this actual block. Alright, so it's, you know, going to do the stripes, it's going to show me the square where the flag is, all those things, and it is stitching it directly on my batting. So if we look at number 3, we're going to place one short white strip of fabric right side up, completely covering over section 1. Now this is where you need to refer to the picture in number 2 to know where is number 1. Okay, number 1 is this very first stripe here above the square where the star is going to be. So you have to place your white fabric right side up, covering up that whole rectangle. Now, you want to have extra to the left side of that rectangle and extra to the top of that rectangle. Alright? You want to make sure you at least have a 1/4 inch on the top and on the left side so that can get caught in the seam allowance when we actually sew all this together. Alright? So now that that's done, I need to go get one of my, oh, it's telling me how wide it is. So it's going to do this stitch outside my batting. That's the other line. When you're placing these outside pieces, you want to cover up that particular stitch it's doing, because that's for the seam allowance. So you need to make sure you have that extra 1/4 inch all the way around. So I'm going to get one of my short stripes, and you want to look at your fabric to know right side and wrong side. Alright, so I have it ready. If you want to iron them, you could. I used the iron on or iron away marker on my fabric here, so I'm not worried about that. That'll come off when I go to iron it completely. So I want to put my first piece down. So let me move my hoop out here. See if you can actually see this. So here is my first rectangle, right? Remember, you need to refer to that picture. So it's right here in this top left side of my hoop. So I need to cover that rectangle up, and I need to have extra at the top and extra on the left side. And of course, there's plenty that'll cover up even this stitch line here that's there. So the cotton fabric sitting on the batting tends to stay put. If you don't trust it, then put a piece of tape at, you know, the opposite ends. Alright, but I mean, it normally stays put for me. What I'm looking at here is how see-through. Do I like the way that that looks? It doesn't look white enough to me. So I am now going to pause, and I'm going to take all the white fabric that I cut from my flag, and I am going to go add shape flex to the back of it. Okay? So that is what I'm going to do right now, and we will be back. So on the white fabric used for the flag stripes, I just want it to really look white. So I am going to add the shape flex. Alright, so I went and shape flexed it. I don't know if you can see. Let me see if I lay it on that paper. When I add my shape flex, I just leave a little bit of edge all the way around. And that's so, I just cut it like a 1/4 inch smaller in width and length, so that when I put the shape flex on, I'm not getting any of that shape flex on my ironing board or the iron, depending on how you do it. So I did the white stripes. There's 3 white stripes. I did the white 5.5 by 5 or 5 by 5 piece, which is going to be part of the star. And I also went ahead and just cut the piece out for the mustard while I was there, because I think that'll give it a little bit more stability on that. Alright, so that's where I added my shape flex. So now I'm back to my step. I'm going to switch over and we are going to put our first block down, which is the first stripe. And again, you want to have a little extra, you know, 1/4 inch or more at the top and a 1/4 inch more on the left hand side, and you're going to place that down. And if you think it's going to move, I'm going to say add a piece of tape to the top and bottom to hold it in place. All right, I have that number 1 covered completely. All right, so now that I have it covered, I am looking at the right side of this fabric too. Okay, the first piece goes down right side up. So, you know, that's kind of a normal for them. I am now going to do number 2 of the embroidery file, and I'm going to stitch the trimming placement line. It's just going to do a vertical line where I need to trim the white fabric and where I'm going to place the next fabric down, which will be the red fabric. So we're going to do this trim and placement line now. Okay, so where I place this white fabric, I do not have anything really to trim off. I did, you know, pretty close to that line. So if you place the white fabric down and you didn't catch any of it, just back up a step, put the white fabric back down, and then stitch it again. Okay, make sure you catch that white fabric. I caught it right, you know, like 1/8 of an inch away from the stitch. So I am not going to have to trim that fabric. So now I'm going to get a piece of the red fabric. I'm on number 6. Place the short red stripe right side down with the long edge centered on the stitch line. So we're going to put this piece wrong side down, but we're going to lay it on the white fabric. All right, and we're going to line up the edge where that stitch was just did. We just stitched out that one stitch. All right, so here's my red fabric, and remember we have words. All right, so if I'm going to put it right side down, it's going to seam these two together, and then we're going to actually fold this open. So if you wanted to look at what it was going to look like, you can kind of lay it there and say, oh, you know what? I want it to be this way instead. Now, the words go all different ways. So you're always going to have words that are going to be that you can see from the top, bottom, right, left, all that, because the words go in all 4 directions. So it's up to you how you want to lay it down and things like that. But I think I'm just going to leave it just like it was. I'm going to line this up, right? I'm going to put it face down. I'm going to center it along the stitch line so I have a little overhang at the top and a little overhang at the bottom. All right, once you lay that down, you can tape it if you would like, but we're going to stitch number 3 of the embroidery file, and it's going to seam both of these together. All right. Now, once it seams both of these together, we're going to actually flip down the red, and you want to like press it open. All right, you have a couple choices of pressing it open. I'm going to move my hoop out just a little bit here so we can see what it looks like. Now, you could finger press it open. That works just fine. I don't know that I would take my hoop out and go over to an iron and iron it open. I don't think that you really have to do that. So what I prefer to do is I usually will finger press, and if I'm not sure I'm getting it flat enough, I'll use this pressing tool. All right, and I am pressing on a hard surface. All right, I have an extended table here, which is wonderful on my embroidery machine. So to me, that just makes it just a little bit better. Sometimes like I can do it with my nails and get that to lay nice and flat. So that's basically what you want it to look like. You want it to be nice and flat. I'm going to trim this little string that came out of the seam there. So now that we pressed it open, we're getting ready to do number 9 of the embroidery file. We're going to stitch the trimming and placement line for the next piece. All right, so again, it's just going to stitch a line all the way down there. So I'm moving my hoop back where it was, and then I'm going to hit start, and it's going to stitch, right, this new placement and trimming line. All right. Now see all this red? I'm trimming all of this off, right? You're going to trim all of that off. Now for me to trim it, I like, see what I'm doing? I just like to fold it up a little bit and get that crease. And I'm going to trim that fabric from way back here where it starts all the way to the other end. All right. And me folding the fabric up, it just helps me hold the fabric up off the batting a little bit and like get my scissors in there and trim it. And again, I trim all the way to the other side. All right, so this piece of fabric here is scrap. So that was the trimming and placement line. Oh, placement line? Well, placement line tells me I'm going to get ready and I'm going to place the next piece down. So piece number 4. So I'm going to page now. Page 11. I'm getting ready to put number 4 down. So again, you're going to get the white stripe fabric. You're going to place it right side down and you're going to center it on the line. So remember, all the pieces from here on out go basically right side down when we're doing these pieced blocks. So you're going to center this white fabric right along that stitch line. And you're going to line it up right on that stitch line, and you have a little extra down here and a little extra up here. Again, at the top, you definitely want to have your 1/4 inch hanging over. The fabric should be just fine lengthwise for you to fit. And again, right side down, it's covering that red stripe. So I'm going to stitch this seam next. That is step number 5 of the embroidery file, and it's number 12 of the instructions. So here we go. We're going to seam these two together. And just like the red, we're going to fold it open, right? We're going to take that and we're going to open it. And I'm going to move my hoop back so you can kind of see a little bit because it stopped way at the top, or at the, in the middle. So again, I want to crease that fabric. So you can hand press it. And I'm just going to take my little roller and roll it right along there. So with the shape flex on it, it does make it a little bit more sturdier, the fabric. But, me using this little hand press works pretty good. Holds it down. All right. So piece 1, piece 2, piece 3. We're getting ready now to do piece 4. But what do I need? I need to know where to place it. So, of course, we're going to stitch number 6 of the embroidery file and stitch that trimming and placement line for the next stripe. So my hoop just moved back where it finished the last stitch. And there is the next trim and placement line. All right, it's a trim line and a placement line. So what am I going to do? I'm just going to fold it up a little bit along the line. So it kind of holds that fabric up for me. And I am just going to take my scissors and trim. And then we want to get piece number 4. So piece number 4 is going to be the next short red piece. So we put down 2 of the short white pieces, and now we're getting ready to put the second red piece down. All right, so you're going to line it up, center it. You'll have a little extra at the top, a little extra at the bottom when you center it on that line. Again, face down. It's covering the white stripe we just stitched down. And now I'm going to hit start, and I am going to seam both of them together, and this is number 7 of the embroidery file, and this is step number 17 of the instructions. So it's seaming these two together. All right, so I'm gonna move my hoop back down. The next thing you want to do, just like you've done all along, is you want to open the red up. And we want to hand press that seam as best we can. We want it to lie flat. Alright, so there we go with that particular fourth piece that we put down. Now, the next instructions are, we're going to do a trimming and placement line right here. It's going to be a horizontal line right across all these red, white stripes here. All right, so that's the next stitch it's going to do. So I'm going to hit start. My hoop's going to move back down into place. And then I'm going to hit start again, and it's going to do that horizontal line. So that horizontal trimming and placement line is number 8 of the embroidery file. All right, so I'm stitching number 8. See that? So it did a little horizontal line all the way down through there. And I'm going to reach and undo my hoop and pull it out this time because I think it'll pull it down too far. So here's that stitch. It was horizontal. And what we need to do now is I'm just going to fold these up. And this is where I want to cut these 4 stripes. I want to cut that fabric out of there, right? So that is step number 20, is to trim these fabrics. And I trim them all the way edge to edge. And what this is doing is it's taking the fabric out of the bulk later when this whole thing is pieced together. So you don't have all that bulk underneath there. All right. Okay. So there we go. So I trimmed all that away. So let's look. What's next? The next is number 21. We want to place piece number 5 right side down over the sections 1 through 4 with the, where we did all the stripes. And you want to center it along that stitched line, that horizontal line that we did. Okay. So I'm not going to hook my hoop back up yet. I'm going to leave it out so you can kind of see a little bit. So we want to take this blue background piece. All right. And we want it to be face down. And we want it to be centered across this placement line here. So you're going to have some hanging out at the top and some hanging out at the bottom. Right? So you kind of have, you want to go beyond that stitch line. So you're just going to center that fabric. And it's just going to sit there. Again, face down. And now what we're going to do is stitch number 9 of the embroidery file, and it's going to seam this blue fabric to our 4 stripes that we just did on the flag. And it's going to create that background piece for the star. So I'm going to hook my hoop back up. My piece is still placed where it needs to be. I'm going to hit start. It is stitching number 9 of the embroidery file, and it's seaming our blue background fabric right there of the star to the stripes. Now, next step is to take that blue fabric and fold it down, open it up, right, and press that seam. So here's that blue fabric. I'm going to open that up And I want to press this seam right where it just seamed all them together. See that? So that's kind of what it looks like. Looks a little, you know, funny right now, but when it's all said and done and it finishes doing all these pieces, it'll really look nice and sharp. All right, step number 24. It's going to stitch the trimming and placement line for the long stripe. So it's going to do this vertical line from the blue all the way through that red stripe here. So it's going to do a big long vertical line here. So we are going to now stitch number 10 of the embroidery file. So I'm moving my hoop back where it needs to go. Then I'm going to hit start. And it's going to do that stitch for me. And again, this is a placement and trimming stitch. So we're getting ready to do one of the long stripes. So see where it's stitched on the blue? I'm just going to fold that up. And I like to fold it all the way to the end of my fabric. My fabric's bigger than it needed to be because I just left it the size that it cut off, and I left the selvage on, and I know the selvage is out of the way. It's not going to be caught in my seam, but I'm going to actually, you know, cut it all the way to the end. You know, when they say cut your fabric or trim the fabric, I go end to end on that fabric. So there's my blue coming off, and here is the red. So I'm just folding that up. It just makes it easier for me to trim it. So I'm trimming this red up off all the way to the edge. All right. It's getting to look more like a flag here. Next step, we want to get we want to get the long white fabric strip. And we want to place it right side down again and line it up, right with that stitch that it just showed me. So I need to get my white. All right, you're going to do it right side down, right? Put the pretty side down. And you want to line it up against that placement line it did. You're going to have a little overhang at the top and a little overhang at the bottom on that stitch line. Where it's stitched, you're going to have a little bit up there and a little bit down here. You need a 1/4 inch beyond your batting here, and you need a 1/4 inch at the top, right? Because you want to be able to sew this when we're done into our quilt. So we have to have that seam allowance to sew it. All right, so I have this placed down, right side down. It's now going to seam this stripe to the blue and the other stripes. So this is piece number 6 that we're putting down right now. So I'm going to hit start, and I'm going to seam these together, and that is number 11 of the embroidery file. So I am right now on step 27 at the bottom of page 15. Okay. Just like the other ones, when this is done, I'm going to open it up. So I'm going to fold that white over, and I'm going to press that seam. All right. So remember, you don't want to press on your hoop if you don't have something underneath of it, right? Because you don't want it popping out of the hoop. All right, so there's our white strip now that we have it open. The next thing we're going to do now is we're going to do number 12 of the embroidery file, and it's again going to give me a placement and trim line to add the last red stripe. Alright, so it's going to do another really long vertical line, and this is going to show me where we're going to add our red stripe. Alright, So I'm going to roll this white up just a little bit here, because this is where I need to trim. Right? I need to trim all this off, because then I'm going to get ready and put down the red stripe. And that should be the last of our striped material that we cut for this particular block. Okay, trimming my white away. All right, so now I have this really long vertical line. Again, I want to line up my red fabric right along that line. And we want it to be face down. See if that's what I want to do. Not really. I think it still needs to go this way. All right. So I am, right, I got a little bit on this end and a little bit at the top. So I at least need a 1/4 inch at both ends, right, to catch in that seam. I have it right side down. I lined it up. So what am I going to do? I'm going to seam them together. So I am now on page 16 at the top. I'm going to do number 13 of the embroidery file, all right, which is going to seam this last red stripe on there of my flag block. So here we go. It's going to seam these together. And again, once it seams them together, we're going to open up that red and we're going to press it open. All right, so again, where it stops for the next quilting, I like to move it so you guys can see it, but I'm going to press open the red, right? So this is that last red stripe we have. All right, so there's the red stripe. Now, this here, this marker here is the Kimberbell marker for quilting, and that needs to be sprayed with water for it to go away. Sometimes you have to, I spray it, I let it dry. I spray it, I let it dry. I don't really take an iron to it. I just spritz it with the spritzer. And I walk away for a little while, do something, and I come back, and if it's still there, I just spritz it again. So when we're done with this, I'm going to be spritzing it from this side so that you don't see that my measurements there on that block. But the rest of them were all done with a heat one and not with a the water soluble marker. So now that you have that all pressed open, you can kind of see you really got the shape of the flag now. What you're going to do is you're going to stitch number 14 of the flag. And this is like going to tack down the big rectangle of the flag. Now, when it does that, don't trim your fabric. All right? You still need to trim this fabric later with a seam allowance in order to get it into the pillow. So don't trim the fabric, right? So we are going to do number 14 of the embroidery file, and it's going to tack down our flag all the way around in a big rectangle. All right, so all you need to do is make sure that all this fabric stays nice and flat. So again, it's just putting a big rectangle here. So this is basically the size of the block when we're finished. It's going to be a little bit bigger, I think, than this. But we might actually be trimming on these stitch lines later by the feel of it where the batting is. This line seems to stitch about 1/4 inch away from my batting. All right. So now, moving on to step number 35. Oh, look at that. There is a change of color here because you're going to see this color. So we are going to stitch the star placement line, and you can see it's going to stitch like 4 triangles out there on your blue fabric. And then you're going to lay the mustard fabric down, that yellow, and you're going to tack them down, and then you're going to trim close to the line. All right, and they have a decorative outline stitch. Okay, since they even have a decorative outline stitch, I'm kind of glad then that I added the shape flex to the back of it. The shape flex is going to help it not fray as much. All right, but I do want to go get a color that matches this mustard, the one that I like the most. It might be like a goldish type color, you know, yellow gold kind of color. And that's what I'm going to put in my machine right now. And we are going to stitch these placement lines, and we're going to get part of the star done. All right, I have my yellow, my goldish yellow loaded. I'm getting ready to do number 15 of the embroidery file, and it's going to show me where to place my mustard fabric, which is part of the star on the flag. As you can see here, it's going to do like 4 different little rectangles on the blue. And once it does the 4, the next thing we're going to do is step number 36. We're going to place our mustard seed silky cotton fabric. This is the Silky Solids from Kimberbell. We're going to place that down, covering up all of these triangles. And basically, we're doing them all at one time, and that's why we cut the fabric to this size. So you just want to lay your fabric, making sure that it's covering up all of the triangles. And again, right side up is your fabric, so you're looking at the pretty side. I'm going to hit start, and we're going to stitch number 16 of the embroidery file, and it's going to tack down all of the triangles. And it should go around them both twice. Or all 4 of them twice, I should say. And when it's done doing that, our next step will be to trim that mustard fabric away. All right. And I'm still going to leave my mustard or my goldish color thread in, because the next step, number 17 of the embroidery file, will be a decorative stitch around these triangles. So I'm going to be back when I'm done trimming my fabric and we do the decorative stitch. All right, you can see I have my 4 triangles, and we trimmed around the 4 triangles. And now I'm going to do the decorative stitching. So again, I left my gold color in. I'm going to hit start, and that is number 17 of the embroidery file. So we're going to do this decorative stitching all around our little gold, you know, triangles that are part of the star. And I'm going to let that all stitch out. Should take a minute or so, and then we'll be back. Alright, I put my white thread in because that's step 18, number 40. So 18 of the embroidery file, it's suggesting white, and it's going to stitch the star placement line. Alright, so that's going to be where we're going to put our white fabric. So I'm going to hit start, and it's going to show me where we're going to do that. I will tell you, when it did the decorative stitching on the mustard triangles, it only did that decorative stitching on 2 sides, because the 3rd side is, you know, where we just kind of went down that third side, and it's going to be, you know, over, we're going to stitch over that side where we put the white fabric. So it didn't do the decorative stitch on the third side of the triangles. So now we want to place our white fabric covering up this big star. Now, all the stripes in my flag are going up and down. You know, they're going horizontally when I laid them down. So I think I'm going to do my star the same way. We can look at it later. You guys can, you know, change it up later if you want. The other thing is I definitely used the shape flex on the back of all the white, remember. So it does have shape flex on it. So I am lining my fabric up. I want to make sure that it covers all of the background, right? All of that star background, it's all covered up. And then I'm going to hit start, and I'm going to stitch number 19 of the embroidery file, and it's going to tack down our white. And this is going to look like that big, you know, part of the center of the actual star. Now when it's done tacking this down, we will trim close to the stitch line. Alright, and it is going around it twice. And we're going to leave the white in, and we're going to do that decorative outline stitch of the white fabric. So again, it's a good thing to have the shape flex on it, because that'll help the fabric not fray as we finish up this block. So I am going to pause while I trim around the white, and we'll be back to finish. Okay, you can see I trimmed my white all the way around. I still have my white thread in, and now we're going to stitch number 20 of the embroidery file, and it's going to stitch this decorative stitch for the white, and it's actually going to do like a cross in the middle, just so you know. So it's going to stitch all this out and finish up that star. So I'm going to start that. So that is step number 20 of the embroidery file. And don't forget that when this is done, I still want to come back and stitch, I think I'm going to stitch my scrolls quilting over top of everything. And I think I'm just going to do that all in white as well. So we'll be back in a little bit here. We're going to let this decorative stitch out on our white part of the star. Alright, so it's done this decorative stitch all around the star, and it really makes it look like it's a pieced star, the way that it did the decorative stitching in the center to make that cross. Now what I do want to not forget is, like, that was the end of the embroidery file, so I need to, it takes me back to step 1, and step 1 was my placement for my batting, so I don't want to do that. I already did. I already put my batting down and tacked it down, right? I have my fabric line here, and I don't really need to do that outline again of the fabric. So I'm skipping those first 4. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the swirl quilting. And again, I picked swirl in this one. I'm just trying to make them all blend. I'm using the clear blue tiles, block by block, scroll, and this was the 6x10 size. Alright, so I'm going to hit start, and I'm doing it just with white thread. I believe on all of them is what's going to happen. So you're going to see the scroll on the red, you're going to see it on the blue, you're not going to see it on the lighter colors. So we're going to let this quilt all out. And again, I had to build the block first, right? Remember, this one didn't have a background to put down and quilt. I physically had to build that background as we pieced the flag together. So we're going to let the quilting stitch out, and we'll be back, and we'll show you the finished block when it's done quilting. Okay, I just finished the quilting. So I am on step 45, and you're supposed to remove the block from the hoop. And then when you go to page 17, you will actually trim down the block. And you're going to be using 2 sizes of the orange pop rulers, because your block should measure 6.5 by 10.5 when you're done. All right, now I'm not going to trim my block to the end, and I'll do a video where I trim all the blocks up. So what I am going to do is I want to flip over to page 18, and I am going to get ready to do the cherries. All right. So I'm going to end this video, and we will be back with the next video for cherries.